If you compare Last Epoch to what it was just a year ago, the Tombs of the Erased update is almost objectively a good thing. It seems people are enjoying themselves, myself included. A bunch of new content got added, Endgame was massively improved with all the Weaver stuff, and the randomized content adds a lot of variety and makes echoes more interesting. The overall impact of this patch is very positive, I would say. It's therefore somewhat strange that I reached a point already at around 50 hours of playtime where I'm just done playing the game. I farmed empowered timelines, reached level 95, and while there is more stuff to do, more builds to try out, more bosses to kill, I don't feel very compelled to do that content. Normally, in for example a game like Diablo 4, I'm done with the season after completing all the new content, getting the new character powers, progressing to around 150 paragon or something, basically when I have the feeling I completed everything the season has to offer. I know for a fact that in Last Epoch I haven't completed everything the season or the cycle has to offer. I am only at empowered timelines at around 100 corruption, and I killed I think 3 harbingers, that's it. Effectively, what this update has brought for me was a lot of variety when playing the game. I think overall the game has been much more interesting to play in terms of content. I haven't been bored at all pretty much. I like all the random events. I think the gameplay loop around woven echoes, tombs and cemeteries just works. The update all in all is a big step forward for Last Epoch. But unfortunately, I've still reached a point where I don't feel like playing more of this game. And after I figured out why, I wanted to make this video. So let's dive in. I would like to set the scene and explain where my enjoyment comes from in playing video games in general and ARPGs in particular. During the day at my job, I have a good number of days where my puzzle solving skills are required, you could say. I'm expected to solve a bunch of complex issues, which I very much enjoy, but then when I come home at night, I'm not always looking for more issues to solve. Read Theorycraft. I theorycraft during the day as an architect, and during the night I just want to play a game. I do enjoy the build making and theory crafting at times in ARPGs, but more than that I enjoy spinning up a new character, killing a bunch of monsters, loot a bunch of loot and get stronger over time. I think so far so good, right? That's not a weird thing to say. What might differentiate me from, for example, other content creators, in particular those who stream, so pretty much all other content creators, is that I'm playing these games without any distractions. I don't listen to music, I don't watch other streams really for the most part. I don't have to read chat or be funny when streaming, I just sit down and play the video game. And as a result, I may value certain aspects of the game differently than those that don't do this. I think it's fair to say that these are different approaches to playing a video game, and they're both completely fine, of course. I'm not taking a purist approach here, I'm just explaining how I enjoy video games because that is important for the video. The reason I'm done playing Last Epoch isn't the endgame content. I think you could make a solid argument that Last Epoch in terms of endgame content has currently more to offer than Path of Exile 2 or Diablo 4. You could make that argument, it has at least some merit simply by comparing the endgame systems or the crafting options, accessibility, that sort of thing. And if these aspects of the game are the main reason you're playing the game, meaning you're primarily playing the game for the content it offers, so the bosses, the timelines, the crafting, those things, you're going to have a good time. For me, these things matter, stuff to do in endgame. Without it, there's not much to play after all. And yet, I'm also spending about 50 hours each season in Diablo 4, although for different reasons. I'm spending significantly more than 50 hours per season in Path of Exile 2, and we don't even have to talk about Path of Exile 1, that game is miles ahead of anything else currently on the market, in my opinion. The reason I'm done playing Last Epoch is also not that I'm not enjoying the new content, because I am. I think it's well made, it has an interesting gameplay loop like I mentioned, there's plenty to do. I like how the woven echoes have their own identity and that you can create these massive webs with woven echoes. It's all good, maybe even more than good. This isn't the issue either. The issue isn't content. For me to keep playing a game, I need some sense of immersion, some idea that I'm walking around in a believable world, some moments in the game that surprise me or that I connect with or that make me really appreciate a certain aspect of the game. A bit of an escape from reality after a day of work. Because without that, I'm just playing random systems in a video game while being distracted by watching a stream or Netflix. And that's where I feel Last Epoch is currently, and it has been there since it launched in early access. To me, Last Epoch is a bunch of fun systems like crafting or legendary potential or the woven echoes or the in-game loot filter, but what it is not is a coherent video game where these systems come together in a meaningful way. I've noticed this more and more, and that is what's stopping me and dragging me back to other video games which arguably has less interesting systems to play around with, but provide a more coherent and immersive experience. To me, Path of Exile 2 and Diablo 4 are more complete in terms of the experience they offer when you separate running around and killing monsters and looting stuff from the rest of the content of the game, such as endgame progression. I want to break this down into a few aspects because this may come across as vague, this distinction, and who knows, maybe the Last Epoch devs can do something with this feedback if I'm being more specific. I'm gonna sound like a broken record in sound and music because I've filed this complaint a lot in the past, so I will keep it fairly short, but a big part of a believable world and a big part of feeling immersed in a video game are sounds and music. Sound effects, that's important because poorly crafted sound effects make combat feel less impactful or even annoying. The minion sounds really hurt my ears. For a game of this caliber, I feel there are no excuses anymore at this point for the sound effects, the voice acting, the screaming NPCs all the time, the poor mixing and mastering of all of these effects, the lack of low frequencies, the lack of feel of impact, or simply put, the poor quality. Music can elevate games to new heights like it does in Path of Exile 1 and 2, because their composer is incredible of course. But at least music should fit the game, and it should be coherent in the feelings that the game wants to convey, and it should be coherent throughout the game. It's strange to enter a new zone and hear a completely different soundtrack disjointed from what it was before. While Diablo 4 has less in-game music and the music isn't god tier quality either, it still works because it's consistent. What is there is I feel very much in line with what's going on in the game. Eerie music at eerie moments, for example. Last Epoch has some pretty good and fitting tracks, I think, especially in the hub areas. The game has what seems to be an accomplished composer and not some random dude from the streets, but this guy is either overthinking or overcomplicating the music, particularly noticeable at boss fights, or no one cares to give some feedback every now and then that maybe it's a bit much. I personally find many tracks, too many tracks, nonsensical, weird, and a case of being too creative for your own good. The scores have outlandish compositions as this is some sort of contest, out of place skills, the mixing seems off, instruments and melodies stick out like a sore thumb. I'm quite often just walking through an area and then I stop because I'm hearing a weird sound which I think is coming from outside because I live in a very busy street, and then it turns out it's the soundtrack of the game. That shouldn't happen, I think, and because these soundtracks are so weird at times, it takes me out of the experience. In any other ARPG, I either don't notice the music much, like in Diablo 4, which is fine, or it elevates the experience, like in Path of Exile 1 and 2, which is amazing. Only in Last Epoch it manages to actively bother me. Point 2. Jank. I don't have a better way to put this, and I can tell it has improved at least somewhat from before, but compared to basically any other ARPG out there, Last Epoch still has a lot of jank while playing, while fighting, while killing monsters. I'm not talking about menus here, I'm just talking about the moment-to-moment gameplay when you're actually fighting, you know? Yeah, this may be class dependent, I've played only Necromancer here, but you know, that's what I enjoy playing, right? You can't really blame me for that. Animations, I feel, still aren't smooth, especially compared to the other games that I mentioned in this video. Monsters have massive ragdoll effects for some reason when dying, which just looks weird. I can't see the cursor, which is a real issue because I'm playing on GeForce Now and there's no way for me to run a third-party cursor. At least give me some in-game options. I'm losing the cursor every few minutes and it takes me a few seconds to find it again, which is terrible. It's also smaller things like how loot is displayed, which to me looks cheap. I would really like to be able to change that, have some options here, but apart from colors and capital letters, there are no options. I love the loot filter for its functionality, it's an amazing in-game system, but I don't like the audio-visual aspect of it. What these things lead to, again for me, is that I'm too often taken out of playing the actual video game because I notice or are impacted by one of these janky aspects of Last Epoch. Which is an issue because it means that it's very hard for me to finish a single echo without noticing these, and that leads to the lack of immersion. This is all completely subjective, of course, but hopefully you can see how this isn't in any way related to what you can do in the endgame, but it is related to the moment-to-moment gameplay. It is related to loading an echo and just blasting that echo, and the loading is also janky right now at the moment, right? Last Epoch doesn't let me do all of these things without interrupting me, which is a real shame. I can't blast an echo like I blast a dungeon in D4 or like I blast a map in PoE 1 or 2. There are too many distractions keeping me from doing that. And no amount of content will solve this issue because it's caused by all the small pieces of jank combined. Some of which seem quite easy to fix, like the cursor. I really don't know why the devs seemingly want to die on that hill, but this isn't exactly a new issue. I'll pay for a cursor pack, I have no issues with that, just give me something that I can see. Point 3. The world. For me, Last Epoch struggles with creating a believable world, because of the aspects above but also because of the world itself. At times it has beautiful visuals. I don't have that strong of an opinion on the map design per se, but where I feel the game has issues is with all the different eras. On paper, pretty good idea maybe, and in terms of some of the gameplay mechanics like the temporal sanctum, it's well implemented, but to me, at the end of the day, it's simply confusing. Because Endgame is literally all over the place, I think I missed some grounding of my experience. You could say, and some will in the comments section, that this isn't any different from games like Diablo 4 or Path of Exile, but to me it does feel quite different. In other games, while they have of course biomes and whatnot, I can still relate those to parts of the world that I visited before, for example in the campaign. But in Last Epoch, because the campaign has you time travel all the time, I feel not connected to any part of the world. I don't feel connected to the end of time either, which is a cool zone and all with the black hole and the changing backgrounds and the flying dragon for some reason, but it just seems so random. I know in Path of Exile 1 my hideout is a flying turtle through space. I know this is a very non-tangible argument, but I don't know any other way to put it, and to me it still feels relevant. The last point is character progression. Not endgame progression, by which I mean killing more and more bosses to make your way to Aberoth, for example, but character progression, progressing your own build and gear. Progression in general, both endgame progression and character progression, adds to this feeling of immersion, the feeling that you're getting somewhere. I think achievement is also a big part of immersion. For me, character progression does that a bit more than endgame progression because you're playing your character pretty much all the time, and even when not doing endgame content, you're still working on your character by respecking or crafting or doing that sort of thing. By gradually getting stronger, you are more invested in your character. I'm not entirely sure why the developers felt the need to turn the loot to 11, because 1 year ago the loot and progression was in a good spot, at least I think so. Right now though, we have a situation that at character level 12, I'm running around with 2 exalted items, 1 legendary, 1 unique. I do ridiculous damage with just a few minions after an hour of campaign, and the whole game doesn't pose any challenge until I reach, I don't know, level 87 or something. And I'm getting into empowered timelines and I'm picking a few map modifiers. Then the game actually poses a bit of a challenge and there's something going on. It's all super easy, barely an inconvenience. And that's pretty weird. I'm playing my own build that I'm just winging as I go. Imagine picking a build from max roll, the game would be even easier. It would be a complete joke in terms of difficulty. I checked the max roll tier list for mapping, my build isn't even on there, but I'm doing completely fine in empowered timelines, and I don't really feel the need to progress much more than that, to be honest. Builds that are actually on this list must be something else entirely, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. So yeah, I think it's weird. I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of current Path of Exile 2 progression either, don't get me wrong, but after Last Epoch went from what I would consider meaningful progression to whatever this is, the argument for weight of items and the argument for some friction that the PoE devs loved to use, at least in the past, does become apparent. Last Epoch went pretty far here, which I thought was reserved for a game like Torchlight Infinite. I thought we already had a game that went completely nuts when handing out items and doing damage. I wasn't aware that we needed Last Epoch to be on that level as well. This might be a bit of a hot take maybe, but I feel after playing last season, Diablo 4 at this point has better character progression than Last Epoch until you reach late endgame perhaps, where D4 gets more and more ridiculous while Last Epoch seems to normalize a bit. But then we're like 30 hours in, right? The amount of loot you get, and not just the amount but also how good it is I feel completely off the charts in Last Epoch 1.2. By not balancing this at least somewhat, the whole idea of character progression is out of the window because it doesn't really matter anymore what skill you pick or how you play the game to a large extent. You're so powerful, you're steamrolling your way to level 90 with any build. And quickly as well, you gain levels fast. I preferred the previous character progression in 1.0 and 1.1 because it felt meaningful, choices had consequences, the game posed reasonable but fun challenges. I was very happy actually with the balance. These days, not that much, and it makes an aspect of the game I enjoy a lot pretty much obsolete until late endgame. I like what the devs have done in terms of the patch and the content. I can imagine that perhaps these immersion areas, as I would call them, were less important, and I think it makes sense to some extent to prioritize other things. Except the sound and music, I mean that's way too impactful to not pay attention to, and the quality is just really poor. So hopefully next patch the game gets some more improvements on aspects not directly related to content or overhauls or many of the other enjoyable things in Last Epoch. Maybe in terms of immersion the game gets some love as well. I would at least very much appreciate that, and it will likely have me play for longer. That being said, I do look forward to more content, meaning the next patch. I also hope it's not gonna take a year, but who knows. And that's it really. I hope you had a good time watching this video. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you have any suggestions, and I would love to hear what you think about the game. Subscribe and like for more ARPG content. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.